The sun had barely begun its slow climb over the horizon when Petty Officer Cole Matthews pulled into the Naval Air Station parking lot. The mist clung to the asphalt like a thin veil, and the first engines of the day hummed softly in the distance. Cole had grown accustomed to the early mornings. They were quieter, easier, a time when the base seemed to breathe rather than roar. Yet even in these hours, there was one presence that always stood out, the old janitor. Cole first noticed him months ago, moving along the hangar floors like a ghost. The man's broom swept with precise, almost military efficiency, and every step he took had a weight, a rhythm that suggested discipline beneath his aged exterior. Cole had joked with his shipmates about the man, giving him nicknames like the Phantom Sweeper or Gramps on patrol, but none of it captured the odd magnetism of his presence. This morning was no different. Cole parked and grabbed his coffee, eyes drifting toward Hangar 14. There he was, the old man, bent slightly at the waist, his gray hair spilling from beneath a worn cap. Sleeves rolled up, hands gripping the broom with care. He moved deliberately, sweeping dust from the floor, the lines of his face carved deep from years of sun, wind, and perhaps more than one kind of hardship. "Morning, sir," Cole called as he approached, trying to mask his curiosity. The old man didn't look up immediately, absorbed in his methodical work. "Hey, old Tom," Cole added, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Ever think about joining a flight crew? You look like a natural." The janitor paused, lifting his eyes for a brief moment. They were sharp and blue, right beneath the wrinkles of time. He gave a small, knowing smile. "Not for me, son," he said softly, returning to his sweeping. Cole laughed, shrugging. "You could be anyone in the world. You ever—" He hesitated. "You ever have a call sign?" The broom paused mid-sweep. The man tilted his head, considering Cole with a weight that made the young petty officer shift uncomfortably. Finally, he answered, almost in a whisper, "Haven't used it in years." The words hung in the air. Something in the calm, quiet delivery suggested this wasn't an old man hiding from life, but a man who had already lived through storms Cole couldn't imagine. He shrugged, trying to dismiss the thought. "Right, just mopping up then," he said. Cole moved on to the hangar door, but curiosity gnawed at him all morning. Every time he passed old Tom, he noticed small details, the worn insignia on the back of his cap, the way he measured each step like he was walking through a minefield, the careful precision of his movements. None of it screamed janitor. Not really. By noon, the base was buzzing with activity. Helicopters rotated in and out, engines roaring like thunder. Sailors rushed to and fro, carrying fuel lines, checking equipment, and swapping maintenance reports. Cole observed the chaos with practiced eyes. But he couldn't stop glancing at old Tom. The old man moved through the hangar like he belonged there, familiar with every panel, every shadow, every humming machine. Cole's curiosity finally got the better of him. During a brief break, he approached the man again. "Tom," he began, "you've been here a long time, haven't you? You ever fly these birds?" The janitor looked up slowly, a glint of something unreadable in his eyes. "I've flown more than you'll ever know," he said, voice low, controlled. Then, as though remembering the role he played now, he added, "But not anymore. This is enough." Cole frowned, unsettled. Most sailors loved a story, a war tale, a glimpse of heroism. But old Tom didn't offer one. His words were clipped, precise, hinting at a life of discipline, danger, and secrecy. Cole didn't press further. He respected privacy, even if it left a void where curiosity screamed. As the afternoon sun rose higher, Cole watched the man sweep. He seemed to glide along the hangar floor, each movement economical, efficient, and purposeful. It wasn't just the broom. It was the rhythm, the quiet authority that emanated from him. Other sailors noticed too, though no one ever commented openly. There was something magnetic, a silent aura that commanded attention without demand. Later, Cole wandered past the old mess hall, where photographs lined the walls, sailors saluting, decorated pilots with medals gleaming in polished sunlight, crews standing proud beside helicopters. One picture caught his eye. The older sailors in the mess didn't pay it much attention, but Cole paused. There, in the back row, was a man who looked startlingly like Old Tom. Younger, certainly, but unmistakably him. The patch on his shoulder read, 160th SOA, our Night Stalkers. Cole's heart skipped a beat. The Night Stalkers? That elite helicopter regiment known for covert operations, impossible missions, and lives saved in the dead of night? He stared at the photo for a long moment, and at the janitor sweeping the hangar floor just beyond the glass. Could it be? When he finally asked Tom about it later, the janitor only smiled faintly. Different skies, son, he said, almost cryptically. Those were other lives. Don't worry about them now. And with that, he returned to his sweeping. Cole couldn't help but respect the quiet strength in the old man. He realized that sometimes heroism doesn't scream. Sometimes it sweeps quietly through the hangar before dawn, unnoticed but undeniable. As the day stretched on, Cole watched him from the corner of his eye, sensing that beneath the mop and the cap was a story the base might never hear, except in whispers. By evening, as the sun dipped low and long shadows stretched across the hangar, Cole left for quarters, still thinking about Old Tom. There was a calmness to the man, a discipline born of years in the sky, a mystery that hinted at untold missions and silent victories. He couldn't explain why, but he felt a twinge of anticipation, as though the man's story wasn't finished, and when it unfolded, it would be unlike anything he'd ever imagined. And Cole was right. The calm before dawn, the quiet sweep of a broom, was only the beginning. Beneath the surface of Hangar 14, beneath the dust and shadows, lay a man whose call sign had once commanded fleets, whose hands had saved lives, and whose presence would soon shock an entire naval base. That day, Cole didn't yet know it, but he had brushed shoulders with legend, and the world was about to see Dragon 6 awake once more. The next morning, the base seemed smaller to Cole, even though the hangars were just as massive, the jets gleaming beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. The memory of yesterday's quiet encounter with Old Tom lingered, like a puzzle, missing its centerpiece. He couldn't shake the feeling that the janitor was hiding more than just a broom. There was a weight in the way he moved, an air of authority that no janitor, no ordinary man, should have possessed. As Cole walked past the mess hall, his eyes fell on a cluster of younger sailors huddled together, whispering furtively. "Did you see him yesterday?" one asked. "The old janitor? He saved the flight line from that blown fuse. His hands were faster than anyone else's." Cole raised an eyebrow. He hadn't noticed the incident. Old Tom's actions were subtle, almost invisible, like a shadow keeping the chaos at bay. "Yeah," another sailor chimed in. "And I swear I saw a patch on his shoulder the other day. Looked like a SOAR insignia. 160th? Night Stalkers, maybe?" Cole's heart thumped in his chest. He knew the reputation of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. They were legends, ghost pilots, rescuers, the kind of men whose stories were classified. And yet, here was a man cleaning floors like a ghost himself. Was it possible? Could this quiet janitor have once been one of the most elite aviators in the U.S. military? Later, during his rounds in Hangar 14, Cole approached Old Tom carefully, trying to read the man's face without giving away his own excitement. "You ever fly these birds?" Cole asked, pointing casually to a CH-47 Chinook parked nearby. Tom looked at him slowly, eyes narrowing just slightly. "More than most," he said, voice low, steady. "You ever wonder why the sky looks the same no matter where you are, son?" Cole blinked. No, sir?" Tom shook his head, almost smiling. "It's the same everywhere, because it doesn't care who you are. What you do up there. It either matters or it doesn't, and if you live long enough, you'll find most of it doesn't matter. Only the lives you touch do." Cole swallowed hard, realizing he was speaking to a man who had touched far more lives than he could ever imagine. "So, you flew missions overseas?" he asked cautiously. Tom's hands paused on the broom. He seemed to consider it, as though weighing how much of himself to reveal. "Once," he admitted quietly. "Several times. Long nights, long missions. We didn't do it for medals. We did it because someone had to." He glanced past Cole, eyes distant, almost seeing ghosts. "And some ghosts never leave you." The young sailor could feel a shiver crawl down his spine. He had heard stories, certainly, legends of pilots who flew into danger without hesitation, men whose names were spoken only in hushed tones. But here was one in person, blending in with the ordinary, carrying memories too heavy for most people to bear. That evening, Cole wandered the base corridors, stopping by the small display of historical photographs in the mess hall. He noticed a particular image, framed in fading oak, showing a helicopter crew mid-mission. The men were young, grinning, decorated with patches and medals. One figure, in the back row, stood out, tall, gray-haired even in the photograph, eyes intense beneath the helmet. The patch on his shoulder read, 160th SOA, Our Night Stalkers. Cole's breath caught in his throat. The resemblance to Old Tom was uncanny. Could it really be him? He memorized every detail, the squared jaw, the posture, the faint smirk. The resemblance was too exact to be a coincidence. His pulse quickened. When he confronted Tom later in the hangar, trying to sound casual, the janitor's eyes flicked up, sharp and knowing. "That was a long time ago," Tom said. His voice was calm, but carried weight, like a steel beam holding up a hangar. "Different skies. Different dangers. That life isn't for most people." Cole felt the urgency of secrecy. He could press, but he didn't. Something in Tom's demeanor warned him that the old man's story was not to be rushed. It was a quiet storm, waiting for the right moment to roar. Throughout the day, whispers about the janitor's past circulated quietly among the sailors. Some claimed he had once been an officer who vanished after a classified mission. Others said he was dishonorably discharged, though no one could produce proof. Every rumor added to the mystique. Cole noticed how the younger sailors kept a subtle respect for him, even while scoffing at the idea of a mysterious past janitor. By mid-afternoon, the air in Hangar 14 felt heavier than usual. Jets roared overhead, engines screaming like thunder, but beneath it all, there was a current of tension, unspoken but palpable. Cole watched Old Tom work, his movements precise, eyes scanning the hangar as though he anticipated dangers no one else could see. Every sweep of the broom, every adjustment of a floor panel, every glance over the shoulder felt purposeful, deliberate. Cole realized something crucial. Tom was not just a janitor. He was a sentinel, a man whose presence kept the hangar safer than any security protocol. And yet, he moved quietly, leaving no trace of authority except in the subtle way the younger sailors instinctively deferred to him. As the day drew to a close, Cole found himself lingering near the hangar doors, watching Old Tom finish his work. The sunlight slanted through the large windows, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the polished floor. Tom paused, broom in hand, and looked out over the tarmac. His expression softened, eyes distant. Cole could almost see the memories he carried, missions flown under darkness, Lives saved in impossible circumstances. Comrades lost in silence. Finally, Tom spoke, voice low but firm. Sometimes the hardest missions are the ones no one sees. You sweep the floor. You patch the lines. You keep the lights on. And one day, it all matters more than you'll ever know. Cole nodded, understanding a little more than he could put into words. There was honor here, in quiet service, in unseen vigilance. He realized that the janitor's past, however secret, was irrelevant compared to the presence he held now, the calm authority that carried through every corner of the hangar, every life that passed through it. As he walked back to his quarters, Cole felt a mix of awe and anticipation. Old Tom was not just a janitor. He was a man of secrets, of courage, of history that the base had never witnessed. And Cole knew, with a certainty he couldn't explain, that the calm before the storm was about to end. Soon, the story behind Dragon 6 would awaken, and the quiet hangar would shake with the revelation of a man who had once commanded the skies. By nightfall, Hangar 14 was quiet, lit only by dim security lights and the soft hum of resting aircraft. Cole lingered for a moment, glancing at the broom in the corner and the janitor's silhouette against the far wall. He whispered to himself, "One day, I'm going to hear the rest of your story." And deep inside, he knew he wouldn't have to wait long. The day began like any other at Naval Air Station Norfolk, yet a storm was brewing, though it wasn't in the sky. Cole Matthews had finished his morning rounds, checking fuel lines and maintenance logs, but an uneasy feeling lingered. He couldn't explain it. Old Tom's quiet vigilance seemed to hum through the hangar like a warning. By mid-morning, the command center erupted into controlled chaos. A routine training exercise had gone horribly wrong. One of the fleet helicopters, a CH-47 Chinook, had lost contact with the base mid-flight. The screens flickered, warning lights flashed red, and officers barked orders into empty lines. Signal lost. Check frequencies. Status update now, shouted Lieutenant Rivera, her voice slicing through the tension. Cole sprinted toward the hangar, heart pounding. He had learned to remain calm under pressure, but the atmosphere was thick with panic. Radios crackled with static, officers cursed under their breath, and the younger sailors scrambled, unsure of what to do. Every system had a backup, but somehow everything had failed at once. Even the tech chief, normally composed, was pale and muttering under his breath. Amid the chaos, Cole noticed old Tom calmly walking through the hangar. His movements were deliberate, his eyes scanning equipment, assessing the situation. The young petty officer felt a rush of curiosity and hope. Could Tom actually help? He had seen the man in action in small, subtle ways before, but nothing like this. "Sir," Cole said, breathless, "we can't contact the helicopter. The backup lines are dead." Tom raised a hand, motioning him to silence. "Step back, son," he said, voice calm yet commanding. "Let me handle it." Cole hesitated. Old Tom had never acted like a leader here. He was a janitor. Yet something in the man's eyes demanded respect. Without another word, Tom approached an old communications console tucked in the corner, one no one had used in years. Dust covered the keys, wires coiled haphazardly beneath the panel. He adjusted the headset and began typing with precision, flipping switches as if his fingers remembered every movement from decades before. Cole and the other sailors watched, breath caught. "What is he doing?" muttered Petty Officer Jensen. "Not sure. But watch," Cole whispered. Minutes passed, each one stretching like an eternity. The static-filled radio channels crackled and cleared slightly. A calm, steady voice emerged from the static. "Control, this is Dragon 6. Maintain heading 215. I repeat 215. The command center froze. Every officer and sailor turned toward the radio, Disbelief etched across their faces. Lieutenant Rivera's hand trembled over the microphone. "Dragon 6?" she whispered. "That call sign hasn't been active in over a decade." Cole's pulse raced. His eyes widened. That was the very call sign he had jokingly asked about months ago. The janitor. The quiet, unassuming man who swept hangar floors every morning. Was Dragon 6? Tom's fingers moved like lightning across the old console. He patched in backup frequencies, recalibrated the static lines, and began issuing clear, precise instructions to the lost helicopter. His voice was steady, unwavering, commanding respect without ever raising volume. In mere minutes, the aircraft's position stabilized, and the pilot responded with calm acknowledgement. Cole felt a chill. He had read about such men in military history books, the Night Stalkers, elite aviators who executed impossible missions under the most extreme conditions. But he had never imagined seeing one here, in a janitor's uniform, saving a mission no one else could. Dragon 6, and firm altitude 230. Maintain visual on the tower, Tom said, his words crisp and exact. The helicopter obeyed without hesitation, as if responding to an invisible force guiding its flight. The room remained silent, save for the hum of machines and the steady voice of Dragon 6. Officers who had been shouting a moment ago now watched in awe. Witnessing firsthand what Cole had sensed all along, Old Tom was no ordinary man. As the storm outside thickened, the helicopter's course corrected. The crisis that had begun as panic now turned into precision. Each instruction Tom gave was met with obedience from the pilot, every static-filled transmission transformed into clarity. Within minutes, the helicopter returned safely to the base, landing smoothly despite gusting winds. The tension broke, replaced by stunned silence. Officers slowly began to breathe again. Some clapped quietly, others exchanged bewildered glances. And through it all, Old Tom removed his headset, wiped sweat from his brow, and returned to the broom in his hands. Just like that, the janitor who had saved the day became invisible once more. Cole approached him, heart hammering. "Sir, I had no idea," he said, voice trembling. "I mean, how? Who?" Tom looked at him, eyes calm yet piercing. "It's not about who I was, son. It's about what needs to be done. The mission always comes first, no matter what uniform you wear now." Cole nodded, understanding more than words could capture. He realized that heroism didn't always come with medals or recognition. Sometimes it came quietly, in the shadows, in the form of a man sweeping a hangar floor each morning, waiting for the moment to step forward. By late afternoon, the hangar was abuzz with whispers. Sailors shared the story of Dragon 6 in hushed tones, though few dared approach him directly. The man who had once led elite missions overseas had returned, not for glory, but because duty demanded it. And in that quiet acknowledgement, Cole felt a deep respect, bordering on reverence, for the janitor who was more than he seemed. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hangar, Cole lingered near the now empty communications console. The static lines were silent, but the memory of Dragon 6's voice lingered, precise and commanding, like an echo of a storm. He knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning. Old Tom's story, the story of Dragon 6, was far from over. And somewhere inside, Cole realized that he had just witnessed history, not in textbooks. Not in medal ceremonies, but in the quiet, precise actions of a man whose past was as formidable as his presence was subtle. By evening, as the hangar lights flickered on, Cole sat on the edge of a maintenance crate, staring at Old Tom as he swept the floors. The man's face was calm, almost serene, yet Cole could sense the weight of the years, the burden of missions that no one would ever fully understand. He had seen courage that day, not in a dramatic explosion or heroic rescue, but in control, in expertise, and the calm authority that saved lives without ever demanding recognition. Cole whispered to himself, more to commit it to memory than anything else. One day, I'll understand everything about Dragon 6. One day. And even as the night settled over Hangar 14, Cole knew that the calm before the storm was ending. Dragon 6 had returned, and the legacy of Old Tom was about to touch more lives than anyone could imagine. The hangar was silent, yet charged with tension, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Outside, storm clouds churned across the sky, flashes of lightning illuminating the aircraft like ghosts caught in mid-flight. Inside, the command center still buzzed with the aftermath of the morning's crisis. Officers and sailors whispered in disbelief, replaying the calm, commanding voice that had come through the static. Dragon 6. Cole Matthews stood near the edge of the room, heart still hammering. The older janitor, Old Tom, had returned the lost helicopter to safety with a precision that left the entire base stunned. No one had expected a janitor to wield such authority, yet the evidence was undeniable. Every instruction he had given over the radio had been followed perfectly, every course correction flawlessly executed. Lieutenant Rivera, normally composed and unflappable, finally broke the silence. Her voice trembled slightly as she addressed the room. Everyone. That voice? Dragon 6? He saved the helicopter. She paused, looking around at the stunned faces. Do you understand what that means? Few did. Cole felt a thrill of disbelief and awe. Dragon 6 was more than a legend. He was a living embodiment of the Night Stalker's reputation, quiet, invisible, and lethal in skill, yet humble beyond measure. The radio crackled again, and Old Tom's voice returned, calm as ever. Control, helicopter secure. Maintain position until landing. Good work, gentlemen. He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, mission complete. The command center erupted not in panic this time, but in murmurs of astonishment. Officers who had been shouting orders an hour ago now stood frozen, unsure whether to salute, question, or simply absorb the gravity of what had just occurred. The voice that had cut through the storm belonged to a man who had lived countless missions in impossible conditions, a man whose experience had saved lives in the dead of night and the chaos of combat. Cole approached the console cautiously, almost afraid to break the spell. Sir, he said quietly, voice trembling, you didn't just save a helicopter. Old Tom's eyes met his, calm and unwavering. I did what needed to be done, he said, voice soft but firm. Sometimes that's all it takes. It was difficult for Cole to reconcile the image of the old janitor with the voice of Dragon 6. The man had swept floors for months in silence, blending in with the base, yet he had once commanded missions that were the stuff of legend. Cole remembered the photograph in the mess hall, the younger version of Tom, medals gleaming, patch of the 160th SOAR visible on his shoulder. He realized that the janitor he had dismissed as ordinary was anything but. Word of Dragon 6's return spread through the base like wildfire. Sailors who had brushed past Old Tom without a second glance now approached him with quiet reverence. Questions were asked, but carefully. No one wanted to break the calm authority he carried, yet everyone wanted to understand the man who had just restored order when all systems failed. Cole noticed the subtle changes in the younger sailors. They moved with renewed focus. Their respect for the janitor deepened into awe. Even the officers, who had once dismissed him as just a fixture of the hangar, now consulted him for advice. Every word he spoke carried weight, not because of rank, but because of the undeniable authority that came from experience, skill, and a life spent in the crucible of missions no one else could endure. Later, in the quiet of the hangar, Cole followed Old Tom as he made his rounds. The man moved with the same precision he had always shown, yet now there was an unmistakable aura surrounding him. The broom in his hand seemed almost ceremonial, a symbol of his quiet vigilance rather than mere maintenance. Cole found himself fascinated by the duality. Janitor and hero, ordinary and extraordinary, hidden and revealed. "You were amazing this morning," Cole said, trying to capture his disbelief. "I never. I mean, Dragon 6. Incredible." Tom paused, leaning on his broom. "It's not about being incredible, son. It's about doing what you have to do. Years in the sky teach you that control and calm save more lives than heroics ever will." His voice was steady, but a shadow crossed his face, memories, perhaps of missions long past. And sometimes it's the quiet actions that matter most. No one sees them, but they do more than medals ever could. Cole nodded, understanding that the man before him had carried burdens too heavy for most to imagine. Dragon 6's legacy was not just in the missions or the call sign, it was in the silent strength, the preparedness, the ability to act decisively when everything else failed. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the hangar floor, the base commander approached. His expression was a mix of awe, respect, and something else Cole couldn't quite read. "Colonel Reeves," he said, using the formal title that now seemed fitting, "we need to discuss your actions today. Your expertise." Old Tom cut him off gently, shaking his head. "No discussion needed. The mission was completed. That's enough." He returned to the broom, sweeping with deliberate care, as if the extraordinary events of the day had never occurred. Cole watched him, realizing the lesson in humility. Dragon 6 had saved lives, yet he returned immediately to what seemed mundane. To the untrained eye, it was ordinary. To those who knew, it was legendary. That evening, as the hangar emptied and the storm clouds began to break, Cole lingered near the door, staring at the janitor. The young sailor had glimpsed something rare, a man who had been a hero in secret, whose life had been defined by courage, skill, and silent sacrifice. And he knew that the story of Dragon 6 had only just begun to unfold. The night settled over the base, calm now, but Cole could feel the echo of that day lingering. In the quiet hum of the hangar, in the soft scraping of the broom across the floor, there was a presence that could not be ignored, a presence that carried the weight of missions, of lives saved, and of a man who had walked among legends without asking for recognition. And somewhere deep in Cole's chest, a spark ignited. He knew he had witnessed something extraordinary. Dragon 6 was alive, and the world, or at least the base, was about to see the full measure of the man who had once commanded the impossible. By midnight, the hangar was silent. Only Old Tom remained, finishing his rounds. Cole watched from the shadows, heart full of awe, understanding that the calm, ordinary figure before him was in truth a storm of skill and experience. Dragon 6 had returned, not for glory, but because duty demanded it. And Cole knew that the next days would bring more revelations, more awe, and perhaps more danger. The legacy of Dragon 6 had awakened, and nothing at the base would ever be the same again. The following morning, the hangar hummed with a quiet energy that had been absent before. Officers moved with a newfound respect in their steps, and sailors exchanged furtive glances, as if sharing a secret they weren't supposed to know. The previous day's crisis had passed, but its impact lingered like a low, steady drumbeat in everyone's chest. Dragon 6 had appeared, spoken, and vanished back into his janitor's guise. The question on everyone's mind, who was he, really? Cole Matthews arrived early, eager to witness what would unfold. He had spent the night replaying the previous morning in his head, the calm voice over the radio, the precise instructions, the unwavering control. Dragon 6 had been extraordinary, yet the man himself remained calm, almost ordinary, sweeping the floors as if nothing had happened. "Cole, you're not imagining it," whispered Petty Officer Jensen, sidling up beside him. "The brass is already talking. They want to see the man behind the legend." Word spread quickly that the base commander had requested a briefing. Slowly, one by one, officers and senior enlisted personnel gathered in the hangar, forming a semicircle around the janitor. Tom, broom in hand, stood silently, posture straight, eyes calm. Cole noticed the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere, the tension of uncertainty replaced by reverence. Every gaze was locked on him, every movement measured. The commander stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Gentlemen and ladies, this man," he said, gesturing toward the janitor, "is Colonel Thomas Reeves, U.S. Army, retired. And to those who know the call signs, you also know him as Dragon 6. A hushed ripple ran through the crowd. Cole's jaw dropped. Colonel Thomas Reeves, the same name from the old photographs in the mess hall, the same man whispered about in hushed tones in military history circles. Cole's memory flashed back. The patch on the younger Tom's shoulder, the medals gleaming in the photo, the stories sailors had told about elite missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and beyond. Reeves did not bow or gesture. He simply stood, calm, observing the reactions around him. Yet even in his silence, he commanded the room more than anyone else present. The young sailors stared, some in disbelief, some in awe. A legend walked among them, and for weeks he had been invisible. The commander continued, voice heavy with respect. Colonel Reeves' record speaks for itself. Missions deemed impossible, executed with precision and bravery. Rescue operations under enemy fire, nights spent in hostile territory, leadership that saved dozens of lives. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. And yesterday, when our communication lines failed, he stepped in. He restored order, ensured the safety of one of our own, and did so without seeking recognition. That, gentlemen, is leadership. That, gentlemen, is heroism. Cole felt a lump in his throat. The image of the quiet janitor, sweeping the hangar floor just yesterday, collided violently with the man described before him. He realized the depth of the life Tom had lived, the sacrifices, the battles, the constant vigilance. It wasn't just skill. It was courage of the highest order, refined over decades. Finally, Reeves spoke. His voice was calm, deliberate, carrying a quiet authority that demanded attention without forcing it. "I am no different from anyone here. The mission comes first. Lives come first. I did what had to be done. That is all." Yet, for all his modesty, the air seemed to bend around him. Cole noticed the subtle deference in the officer's posture, the careful attention in the younger sailor's eyes. Dragon 6 had stepped out of legend and into reality, and his presence was undeniable. The day continued with day briefings and discussions. Cole stayed close, eager to absorb everything. Reeves spoke little, offering insight only when necessary, yet every word carried the weight of experience. He guided the team through procedures to ensure such communication failures would never happen again. His advice precise and pragmatic, drawn from countless hours in the most extreme conditions imaginable. Between sessions, Cole finally found the courage to speak privately. "Sir, I had no idea," he said quietly, almost reverently. "I mean, the way you handled everything yesterday. Dragon 6. It's incredible." Reeves looked at him, eyes calm but piercing. "It's not incredible. It's preparation. It's discipline. It's paying attention when others don't. That is what keeps people alive." Cole nodded, understanding that he was witnessing the principles of leadership distilled into a human form. Reeves did not seek glory or recognition. Every action he took, whether as a colonel in combat or a janitor in Hangar 14, had been motivated by the same principle: the mission, the lives, the responsibility he bore silently. By afternoon, the base had slowly adjusted to the revelation. Sailors who had once laughed at Old Tom now walked a little straighter, offered respectful greetings, and listened intently whenever he spoke. Even the most skeptical officers were now hesitant to question him, aware that his experience far exceeded their expectations. Cole watched quietly as Reeves moved through the hangar, sweeping the floor with the same calm precision as always. The broom was no longer a tool of mundanity. It was a symbol of his vigilance, a testament to the quiet, steady presence of a man who had lived extraordinary lives in secret. Later, as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the polished hangar floor, the commander approached Reeves once more. "Colonel, the base owes you a debt," he said, voice thick with respect. "We cannot thank you enough for yesterday, or for the years you've spent serving this country." Reeves shook his head slightly, eyes softening. "No debt is owed. I did what I had to do. That is all any of us can do." Cole, observing the exchange, felt a deep sense of humility and awe. He realized that true heroism was not in medals, ceremonies, or stories told for recognition. It was in quiet preparation, in action taken when no one else could, in the willingness to carry burdens invisible to the world. Dragon 6 had done all that and more. As evening fell, the base settled into a rare quiet. The storm had passed, leaving behind calm skies and a sense of solemn respect. Cole lingered near the hangar door, watching Reeves finish his rounds. Every movement, every sweep of the broom, carried the weight of decades of service, missions completed, and lives saved. For Cole, the morning's revelation had changed everything. Old Tom, Dragon 6, Colonel Thomas Reeves' names, roles, and uniforms were irrelevant. The man before him was a living legend, and Cole knew that the lessons he had imparted would echo in the base for years to come. And in that quiet hangar, with the last rays of sunlight painting the floor, Cole whispered to himself, "One day, everyone will understand what Dragon 6 truly represents." For now, however, it was enough to witness it, to learn from it, to respect it. Dragon 6 had revealed his legend, not with fanfare, not with glory, but with calm authority, quiet humility, and unmatched skill. And Cole understood more than ever that this was a story of courage that would never be forgotten, no matter how quietly it had been lived. Evening had settled over Naval Air Station Norfolk, casting long shadows across Hangar 14. The roar of engines had quieted, leaving only the soft hum of night and the occasional metallic creak of resting aircraft. Cole Matthews lingered near the hangar door, reluctant to leave. After the day's events, he needed to understand the man behind the legend, Dragon 6, the janitor who had saved lives and carried a history few could imagine. Tom, still in his janitor's uniform, moved with calm precision, finishing his rounds. The broom in his hand seemed less a tool than a simple quiet vigilance in a world that often overlooked such acts. Cole approached slowly, not wanting to startle him. "Sir," Cole said quietly, "can I walk with you for a moment?" Tom nodded without hesitation, and together they moved through the hangar, the echo of their footsteps mingling with the distant hum of the base at rest. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of oil and fuel, a familiar comfort to those who spent their lives around aircraft. Cole hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Yesterday? Dragon 6? It was incredible. But why? Why come back now, in this quiet way? Tom stopped sweeping and leaned lightly on the broom, gazing at the row of helicopters resting like silent sentinels. His eyes were distant, yet focused. Sometimes it's not about glory, Cole. It's about unfinished business. When you've carried the weight of lives in your hands, you never really retire. You find ways to keep serving, even if it's quiet, even if no one notices. Cole nodded slowly. He understood the sentiment in principle, but the depth of it, the personal toll, was something he could only guess at. But why a janitor? You could have taught, advised, led in some formal capacity. Tom let out a soft, almost sad chuckle. Teaching is important, yes. Leadership, too. But I needed to be here, where I could observe, guide quietly, and step in when it truly mattered. Sometimes the best way to lead is invisibly. Cole looked at him, trying to imagine the decades that had led to this moment. He knew Dragon 6 had flown in hostile skies, conducted missions others deemed impossible, and returned with lives saved. He had likely lost men he couldn't save, faced horrors Cole couldn't imagine, and yet had maintained a calm, composed exterior. That weight, the kind no metal could ever lighten, rested now in the quiet lines of his face. "Sir," Cole ventured carefully, "you lost people, didn't you? Friends, comrades, men under your command?" Tom's jaw tightened for the briefest moment. He didn't look at Cole, instead staring at a shadow cast by the nearest helicopter. "Yes, many, too many. Some nights their faces visit me even now. I can't save everyone, and the memory, it doesn't leave you. It shapes you. It teaches you humility. And sometimes, it teaches you silence." Cole swallowed hard. He had never heard a hero speak like this, with vulnerability beneath authority. It was one thing to command in battle. It was another to carry the ghosts afterward. "And the silence? Is that why you became this?" he asked, gesturing toward the broom, the uniform, the quiet routine. Tom's gaze softened, his voice low but steady. "Yes, the silence protects me, Cole. It allows me to process, to live with the memories without letting them consume me. And it keeps me ready to act when action is truly needed. That is the life I chose after the mission stopped being mine and became everyone else's." Cole realized then that heroism was not just bravery in action. It was endurance, sacrifice, and the ability to live with the consequences of decisions that haunted sleep and shadowed every day. Dragon 6 had endured far more than anyone around him could comprehend, and he had chosen humility over recognition, quiet service over fame. They walked in silence for a few moments, the hum of the bass their only accompaniment. Cole felt a deep respect, bordering on awe, for the man who had shared so much with so few. He wondered how many others in the military carried similar burdens, hidden beneath the surface, unspoken yet profoundly shaping their lives. Finally, Tom spoke again, his tone softer now, almost confessional. "I've seen the cost of being visible, Cole. Sometimes recognition comes too late or not at all. Sometimes it brings danger instead of honor. Here, now, I am useful. I am present. And I can protect lives in my own way." Cole nodded, understanding more than he could express. The broom, the uniform, the quiet vigilance, it was all part of a deliberate choice. Dragon 6 had adapted to the world he was in, preserving his abilities for moments that truly mattered. As the evening deepened, Cole asked the question he had been holding back. "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Tom's eyes glinted with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. "Regret is for those who didn't do enough, Cole. I did what I could. Some lives were saved. Some lost. I carry them all. But regret? No, only responsibility, and that is enough." Cole felt a lump form in his throat. He had grown up with stories of military heroism, of daring rescues and medals on display, but this quiet endurance, this humility, was something entirely different. It was courage measured not in applause, but in survival, in restraint, in the choice to keep moving forward despite unimaginable loss. The two walked back toward the hangar door, the last rays of sunlight fading behind the tarmac. Cole glanced at Dragon 6, realizing for the first time the enormity of the life he had witnessed. It was not just skill, not just heroism. It was history lived, carried silently, and shared only in the moments when it could save lives. "Thank you, sir," Cole said finally, voice quiet but filled with emotion. "For everything. For yesterday. And for letting me see a glimpse of what it truly means to serve." Tom's lips curved in the faintest smile, a shadow of the man he once had been, a flicker of pride hidden beneath years of responsibility. "Keep your eyes open, Cole. You'll see heroes everywhere, in ways you don't expect. And when the time comes, you'll know what to do." Cole nodded, understanding that this lesson would stay with him forever. Dragon 6's story was no longer just about legendary missions or a call sign whispered in secret. It was about endurance, responsibility, and the invisible burden carried by those who chose to protect others. As the hangar lights dimmed, Cole lingered, watching the janitor finish his rounds. The broom swept silently across the floor, every movement deliberate, every gesture imbued with years of experience, grief, and resolve. Cole knew he had witnessed something rare, a man who had lived extraordinary lives, and yet chose quiet service over recognition. And as he finally stepped away, Cole whispered to himself, "I'll never forget this. I'll never forget Dragon 6. The night was silent now, save for the hum of distant machinery and the soft scrape of broom against polished concrete. And in that silence, Dragon 6 continued his watch, a sentinel carrying history, heroism, and the weight of silence that only he could bear. The morning sun spilled over Naval Air Station Norfolk, painting the hangar floors in warm streaks of gold. The events of the past few days had left the base in a rare state of awe and reverence. Sailors and officers alike moved with a quiet respect toward Old Tom, the janitor who is now widely known as Dragon 6. Cole Matthews arrived early, feeling a mix of anticipation and admiration. He had spent the night reflecting on the lessons he had learned, the quiet endurance, the invisible heroism, and the weight of responsibility that Dragon 6 carried. Today was different. The brass had planned a small ceremony to formally acknowledge the actions that had saved lives and restored order during the helicopter crisis. Word had spread quickly. Every floor of the hangar was filled with personnel curious to witness the legend in person. Whispers followed him wherever he moved. "That's Dragon 6. He's the one who saved the helicopter. Colonel Reeves himself." The hangar doors opened, allowing the morning light to flood in. Tom stood at the center, broom in hand, calm and poised, as he always was. Cole watched him, struck by the juxtaposition of his quiet demeanor and the tremendous legacy he carried. Every motion of the broom, every glance, seemed deliberate, purposeful, a silent acknowledgement of the responsibility he bore. The base commander approached, flanked by senior officers and a few visiting dignitaries. "Today," he began, voice strong yet reverent, "we honor a man whose heroism transcends recognition, whose actions have saved lives, and whose presence commands respect beyond his years of service." He paused, eyes sweeping across the gathered crowd. "Colonel Thomas Reeves, Dragon 6, your contributions to this base, to this country, and to the lives you've touched are immeasurable." The room erupted into applause, though subdued by awe rather than ceremony. Cole felt a lump in his throat. He had grown up reading stories of military heroism, but nothing compared to witnessing it firsthand, embodied in a man who had spent decades serving without fanfare. Reeves stepped forward, finally setting the broom aside. His movements were deliberate, measured, yet carried an unspoken humility. He spoke, voice calm, deliberate, and resonant, carrying the weight of years and the authority of countless missions. "I am not here for recognition," he said. "I am here because duty does not end when a uniform changes, when the world assumes the story is finished. Yesterday, I acted because lives were at risk. and I will act again if the need arises. That is what service demands, what honor demands. The officers listened in rapt attention, sailors standing straighter, younger crew members exchanging glances of wonder. Cole noticed how even the most skeptical of them seemed humbled, realizing that the man before them had lived through experiences that few could imagine. After the formal acknowledgement, the commander approached Cole. "Matthews, I want you to be part of this," he said, nodding toward Dragon 6. "You've witnessed his work, his presence, and his quiet guidance. Perhaps you can share a perspective few others see." Cole stepped forward, heart racing. "Sir," he began, voice steady despite the emotion churning within him. "I've seen him walk these floors, silent, unassuming. But I've also seen him take control when no one else could. He doesn't seek recognition, yet his actions save lives every day. He is the definition of a hero, in ways that can't always be measured. We are lucky to witness him, even in small ways." Reeves nodded faintly, eyes softening, a rare glimmer of emotion crossing his face. He did not speak, for there was no need. The room understood. They had glimpsed the essence of a man who had lived extraordinary lives, yet chose humility, quiet vigilance, and discipline over glory. The ceremony concluded with a symbolic gesture, a simple plaque placed near the hangar's entrance. It read, "To Colonel Thomas Dragon 6 Reeves, a sentinel in the shadows, a hero beyond recognition." Sailors and officers paused, reading the words aloud quietly, as if honoring the weight behind them. Cole lingered, observing Reeves, who quietly resumed his sweeping. The broom, once a symbol of mundanity, now carried a weight of reverence, a testament to quiet heroism. Later, Cole had a private moment with Reeves. "Sir," he said softly, "how do you do it? How do you carry all of this, the missions, the loss, the responsibility, and remain calm?" Reeves looked out over the row of helicopters, eyes distant yet steady. "Cole, calm isn't about being emotionless. It's about control, discipline, understanding that fear or grief cannot dictate your actions when lives are at stake. You learn to compartmentalize, to act when action is needed, and to carry the memories quietly when it's over." Cole nodded, absorbing every word. He realized that heroism was not measured in medals or public recognition, but in the silent strength to continue, to endure, to make the hard choices without expectation of praise. Dragon 6 had carried that burden for decades. As the day wore on, Cole noticed something remarkable. Sailors who had once dismissed Old Tom now approached him with respect, seeking guidance, listening carefully to his advice. Reeves moved among them effortlessly, his quiet presence a source of reassurance, knowledge, and inspiration. Every interaction carried a lesson: discipline, vigilance, humility, and the courage to act decisively. Cole followed him through the hangar, observing quietly. "Sir," he asked, "do you ever miss it? The missions, the action, the life you led before this?" Reeves paused, leaning lightly on the broom. "Sometimes. But the life I lead now is just as important. The missions may be different, but the responsibility remains the same. Lives depend on preparation, vigilance, and presence, whether in combat or in a quiet hangar. That is my mission now." As the sun set, painting the hangar in orange and gold, Cole felt a deep sense of clarity. He had seen the full measure of Dragon 6, not just as a legend, not just as a janitor or colonel, but as a man who had lived extraordinary lives, carried immense burdens, and continued to serve without expectation of recognition. The base had honored him formally, yet the true honor lay in the silent lessons he imparted, the respect he inspired, and the lives he protected every day. Cole understood that he had been given a rare gift, the chance to witness quiet heroism, to learn from it, and to carry that understanding forward in his own life. As the night settled, Reeves finished his rounds and paused at the hangar entrance. He looked out over the tarmac, his silhouette framed by the last rays of sunlight. Cole watched from the shadows, realizing that this was more than a man. It was a living embodiment of courage, humility, and unwavering duty. Cole whispered to himself, a quiet promise. One day, everyone will understand the true legacy of Dragon 6. One day, the lessons you carry will be known. But until then, I'll make sure they are not forgotten. And in the quiet hangar, under the fading light, Dragon 6 continued his watch. A sentinel in the shadows, a hero beyond recognition, a legend living among those who might never truly comprehend the depth of his sacrifice. The dawn broke over Naval Air Station Norfolk with a quiet majesty, soft rays cutting through the mist above the hangars. Hangar 14, which had once been a place of ordinary routines, now felt different, almost sacred. The base had witnessed something extraordinary, yet no one would ever fully comprehend the magnitude. Dragon 6, the quiet janitor with decades of elite military experience, had revealed a fraction of the man behind the legend. Cole Matthews stood near the entrance, watching as Colonel Thomas Reeves' Dragon 6 methodically swept the floors. Every stroke was deliberate, precise, filled with the silent authority and confidence that had saved lives only days before. Cole had spent hours reflecting on the man's words, his actions, and the weight of his history. Yet even now, he felt he had barely scratched the surface. Earlier that morning, the base commander had gathered a small group for a private briefing. Officers, senior enlisted personnel, and Cole were present, all keen to understand the scope of what had unfolded. The commander cleared his throat, eyes lingering on Reeves. "Colonel," he began, voice steady, "the helicopter incident. It was handled beyond expectations. But more than that, your presence here, your guidance, your vigilance, this base has never seen anything like it. The legacy you carry is unmatched." Reeves, calm as always, shook his head slightly. "Legacy is not mine to claim. It belongs to the men I served with, those who did not return, and those whose lives I was fortunate enough to touch. Recognition is irrelevant. Duty remains constant, whether or not anyone notices." Cole felt a lump in his throat. He had read about heroism in books, studied it in military history, but nothing prepared him for the quiet humility and depth of character Dragon 6 embodied. He realized that true courage was not measured by medals or ceremonies, but by the willingness to act, to endure, and to carry the weight of lives on one's shoulders. The commander nodded solemnly, then turned to the gathered group. "Gentlemen and ladies, it is my honor to formally recognize Colonel Thomas Reeves, Dragon 6, for his actions, his leadership, and the legacy he continues to uphold. May we all learn from his example." Though the ceremony was formal, there was a profound sense of intimacy in the moment. Cole watched as sailors and officers alike approached Reeves, offering quiet thanks, shaking his hand, or simply standing respectfully in his presence. The janitor, once overlooked and underestimated, was now recognized as a living embodiment of courage, skill, and selfless service. After the formalities, Cole lingered, walking beside Reeves through the hangar. The two moved in silence, the soft scrape of broom against floor echoing in the vast space. "Sir," Cole finally spoke, hesitant yet sincere, "do you ever think about leaving? About going back to a quieter life, maybe somewhere far from all this?" Reeves paused, looking out over the tarmac where helicopters rested like silent guardians. "I've considered it," he admitted quietly. "But this is where I can make a difference. Not in headlines, not in accolades, but here, quietly, where lives depend on vigilance, preparation, and discipline. Some things never change, Cole. Duty is one of them." Cole nodded, absorbing every word. He understood now that Dragon 6's true power lay not only in his skill, but in his unwavering commitment to service. The world could overlook him, but he would never overlook the lives entrusted to his care. That afternoon, a training exercise was underway. Cole watched from a distance as Reeves observed silently, correcting minor errors, offering guidance, yet allowing the younger sailors to take initiative. His presence was steady, reassuring, commanding respect without ever demanding it. Every gesture, every word, carried the weight of experience and the lessons of a lifetime. Suddenly, a small commotion arose near one of the helicopters. A young sailor had misjudged a maintenance procedure, causing a minor safety concern. Panic might have ensued, but Reeves stepped forward with quiet authority. In minutes, he had assessed the problem, instructed the sailor precisely, and resolved the issue safely. No one panicked, no one faltered. In that simple act, Cole saw the essence of Dragon 6. Action grounded in calm knowledge and responsibility. As the day drew to a close, the base gathered once more in the hangar for a final acknowledgement. The commander addressed the personnel, his voice carrying warmth and reverence. Today, we celebrate not just an act of heroism, but a lifetime of service. Colonel Thomas Reeves, Dragon 6, has shown us what it means to lead with quiet authority, to act decisively when lives are at stake, and to endure the weight of duty without expectation of recognition. Let us honor him not only for his actions, but for the example he sets every day. The room erupted in applause. Cole stood silently, overwhelmed by emotion. He realized that Dragon 6's story was not just about extraordinary missions or elite skills. It was about the human qualities that made him legendary: humility, courage, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to others. After the ceremony, Cole walked beside Reeves one last time before leaving the hangar. The older man's posture remained straight, movements precise, eyes calm yet observant. Cole felt a profound respect, mingled with awe, for the man who had carried the lives of others with such quiet dignity. "Thank you, sir," Cole said softly, "for everything. For showing me. For showing all of us what it truly means to serve." Reeves' faint smile, almost imperceptible, conveyed a depth of understanding. "Remember this, Cole. Heroism is not always loud. Recognition is not always immediate. But when the moment comes, you must act with courage, with calm, and with responsibility. That is the legacy we leave." Cole nodded, committing the words to memory. He understood that Dragon 6's story would live on, not just in official reports or photographs, but in the lessons he imparted, in the quiet vigilance he demonstrated, and in the lives he had touched directly and indirectly. As night fell over the base, the hangar stood silent, bathed in the soft glow of overhead lights. Dragon 6, the janitor, the colonel, the hero beyond recognition, finished his rounds. The broom swept steadily across the polished floor, each stroke a testament to decades of service, sacrifice, and the quiet strength that defined him. Cole watched from the shadows, knowing that he had witnessed something rare, something extraordinary. Dragon 6 had revealed his legend not with fanfare, not with medals, but through action, humility, and unwavering dedication. And as the last light faded, Cole whispered to himself, a quiet vow: "I will carry your lessons, Dragon 6. I will honor your legacy. And I will remember that true courage is quiet, deliberate, and enduring." In the silence of the hangar, Dragon 6 continued his watch. A sentinel in the shadows, a protector of lives, a living legend whose story would inspire generations to come. And though the world might not always know his name, those who had witnessed him understood. The legacy of Dragon 6 was timeless, eternal, and unforgettable. The base slept, unaware of the depth of the hero in their midst. But for Cole Matthews, and those who had seen him act, Dragon 6 would never be forgotten.